I now have the honor to invite to the podium the Dean of the Georgetown University McCourt School of Public Policy, Dr. Carol Graysons, for brief remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Carol Graysons. I'm Dean of the McCourt School of Public Policy here at Georgetown. Today, we gather to mark the 32nd commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. A commemoration is a call to remembrance, and today we are called to remember the hundreds of thousands of people who were victims of the systematic killing and extreme violence that occurred. A commemoration is also an act of intentional mindfulness, and today we gather with the intention of committing ourselves to the work of understanding how such atrocities happen and how we can prevent them from ever happening again. We are honored this afternoon to have with us Her Excellency Ambassador Matilda Mukantabana, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Republic of Rwanda to the United States. The ambassador has been a vital bridge between Rwanda and the international community, and her presence here this afternoon means a great deal to all of us. We are also exceptionally grateful to our panel of survivors who have come and agreed to trust us and share their experiences with us. Lastly, I wanted to acknowledge the African Policy Student Association here at the McCourt School, a student organization that has helped organize and made this event possible. And with that, I am honored to welcome Dr. Favorit Iradukunda, Vice President of Kwibuka USA, to the podium.
Your Excellency, Ambassador of Rwanda, distinguished guests, friends of Rwanda, fellow survivors, students and faculty, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Favorit Iradukunda. I have the honor of serving as Vice President of Kwibuka USA, a survivor-led organization committed to preserving memory and advocating for survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. I stand here carrying a profound responsibility to speak on behalf of the victims who lost their lives and the survivors who continue to live with the consequences of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Today we gather not only to remember, but to reaffirm our shared responsibility. In just 100 days, over 1 million Tutsi were killed, targeted simply for being who they were. This was systematic. It was deliberate. It was organized. Tutsis were hunted. Families were destroyed. Children became orphans. Women became widows. Many women were subjected to unimaginable violence. Entire families were erased. And yet, behind these numbers are human lives, stories, and futures that were stolen. Like many survivors, I carry my own story. I lost my father, my grandparents, my father's 6 siblings, and many of their family members, beloved uncles on my mom's side, a grandmother whose love, strength, and resilience still carry me to this day, and many members of my extended family. My surviving mother endured many invisible wounds. and did not live long after 1994. But I also stand here as part of a community that chose to rebuild. As survivors, we were left with nothing, emotionally, financially, and in who we were. And yet we chose to rebuild. Survivors built their lives from nothing. They built families, communities, and the nation. That is resilience. But resilience does not erase responsibility. Today, more than 3 decades later, survivors continue to live with the consequences of the genocide. Many still face trauma. Many live with lasting physical and psychological wounds. Many continue to face economic hardships. And now survivors themselves are aging, with increasing needs of care, support, and dignity. The government of Rwanda has made remarkable progress in rebuilding the country and supporting survivors. But this responsibility cannot rest on Rwanda alone. It is a shared responsibility. Because the lessons of 1994 are not confined to history. Genocide denial continues, and for survivors, denial is not just an opinion. It's a continuation of harm. In the region, anti-Tutsi ideology persists. It fuels violence. It threatens lives. At the same time, hate is spreading faster than ever. In 1994, hate was broadcast through radio. Today, it spreads instantly through social media, digital platforms, and recently, artificial intelligence. The tools have changed, but the danger remains. The question before all of us here is simple. Will we act early, or will we wait until it's too late? We do recognize the important role played by the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda in advancing justice. But we must be honest, justice remains incomplete. Some genocide convicts are still at large, and no one responsible for genocide should ever find safe haven anywhere. For survivors, this is not abstract, it's daily reality. Justice delayed is justice denied. As Ibuka US, we continue to advocate for justice that is complete, for truth that is protected, for survivors who are supported, not only in the remembrance, but in their daily lives. Because remembrance without action is not enough. Today, as we reflect, we must also commit to confronting denial, to stopping hate before it becomes violence, to standing with survivors not only in the words, but action. Never again for us is not a slogan, it's a responsibility that belongs to all of us. Thank you for standing with survivors. Thank you for standing with Rwanda. Because in the end, history will remember not what we said, but what we chose to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iran, for that wonderful message. We will now proceed to the candle lighting ceremony, followed by a minute of silence. You may rise, thank you. As we light our candles, each flame honors lives lost, and together they reflect the resilience of survivors and Rwanda's commitment to healing. They stand as a solemn reminder of the past and a shared pledge to preserve memory, uphold dignity, and prevent such atrocities from ever happening again. We will now observe a moment of silence in honor of those we have lost. Thank you. You may be seated. I would now like to draw your attention on the screen for a brief documentary titled Rwanda, From Despair to Hope.
Formed over the past 30 years. This new Rwanda has been forged out of the ashes of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, an event that shocked the world. Our story offers a warning of what can happen when political leaders preach division and hatred triumphs over humanity. But it also tells us what can be achieved when a determined people fight together for unity and reconciliation. This new Rwanda has been forged out of the ashes of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, an event that shocked the world. Our story offers a warning of what can happen when political leaders preach division and hatred triumphs over humanity. But it also tells us what can be achieved when a determined people fight together. This is our journey, told by those who have traveled together as we have moved from despair to hope. For much of the world, Rwanda first existed in 1994. And yet, our story starts long before this. Before colonialism, Rwandans had a rich culture, one language, and the people were united around their own organic form of governance. It changed when colonial powers chose to control Rwandans by ethnicity, creating division and conflict where none had existed previously. This division grew into hatred and violence, culminating in the genocide against the Tutsi, where over 1 million people were murdered in 100 days.
maze kubona bikomeye abantu batwika abantu barya inka abantu batemagura nazo zabahiri bazishyizeho yewe n'abana na madamu tujya kwa databukwe bari bafite imbaraga nyinshi abo bana rero bahamaze iminsi mike hanyuma musaza wa madamu se wabo ufite imwe na se n'abandi b'abavandimwe babo nibo bafashe iya mbere nta babajyana muri Nyabarongo, barabaheka baragenda babata muri Nyabarongo, barangije barataha.
Muri Jenoside 94 banyica imiryango yanjye mu bana 9 nabyara, hasigayemo utwana 2.
Abana ba Mariya babiri n'umugabo wa Mariya, abo bose basanze kuri bariyeri twe turi kubica.
Abagabo bacu babazamuye mu ngo bababwira ngo tugende tujye kwirinda, ariko bo bazi ikigiye kubaho. Bahera ku mugabo wanjye kuba ari kuri lisite, bahita bamutsinda aho ngaho haruguru y'urugo gatoya, barabarashe, bamurashe amasasu, umwaba ngo n'uyisha mbaye hanuyu.
This genocide was long planned by the government of the time, who used education and the media to divide Rwandans, creating the conditions for the genocide to happen. The preparation of the genocide and of the 100 days of killings happened in full view of the world, who stood by, watched, and did nothing. No one came to Rwanda's rescue. The killings were only stopped when the Rwanda Patriotic Front overthrew the genocidal government. From that moment, Rwandans began the long, hard road to recovery, healing, and reconciliation.
Mu mwaka w'ibihumbi 2004 nibwo nafashe icyemezo cyo gusaba imbabazi Mariya. Mfati umwanzuro numvaga mvuga nti se wenda yaba ntari namusanzeyo, kuko numvaga mfite ubwoba. Nkongera nkavuga nti se buri amaherezo yazaba yahe. Ngize amahirwe rero ubwo numva ngo Mariya asanze ariyo, nibwira mbwiye nti uko biri kose urabizi njye ndi mu bantu nyine bakwiciye, ariko none ndagira ngo umimbabazi.
Byagiye bigenda gahoro, uko dusabana, uko duhura, uko tuvugana, uko twigishwa, hacemo inyigisho nyinshi cyane, ntabwo byari byoroshye.
Neza nemereye neza ko imbabazi yazimpaye. Ngiye ku isantere ahantu bambonye Mariya, naramuhamagaye turasangira, mbona arembeye araza turasangira. Muri icyo munsi n'ubusari bwarafunguwe n'ubusari bwumve muri gereza.
To heal the wounds of a nation where neighbors killed neighbors, and even some family members turned on each other, the new Rwanda had to find a way to deliver justice for the victims, which could manage the scale of the crimes, and could also heal the torn social fabric of our society. So, we turn to our history for the answer. We set up Gacaca tribunals, a traditional form of community justice where citizens elected Inyanga Mugayo, men and women of integrity in their communities, who heard almost 2 million genocide cases. This not only ensured that justice was delivered, but also established the truth of the killings. Reconciliation could begin at last.
Gacaca zimaze kugeramo, abaturage tugakorana, bariya bafunguye bakaza bagashinjanya kanaka, uwe kanaka twajyanye mu gitero, uwe kanaka twajyanye mu gitero, ngo kuko abakoze jenoside ngo kuko bagaragaye.
Abenshi bo muri Gacaca byatumye bamenya ko ababo bishwe, barihangana barazakira, bamenya n'aho bajugunywe.
We asked that the genocide survivors make huge sacrifices by putting aside their desire for retribution in favor of forgiveness and reconciliation. And we asked all Rwandans to leave the ethnic divisions in the past and embrace a future of Rwanda, where we are all Rwandan.
Abaga muri CNLD naje mfite ipeti rya General de Brigade. Kuyo dufata icyemezo tukava muri CNLD tukaza mu Rwanda, nuko twari tumaze kumenya neza ko leta y'u Rwanda ifite gahunda nziza yo kunga Abanyarwanda, ikangurira Abanyarwanda aho bari hose batabuke mu mahoro, kandi waza ikakwakira neza nk'Umunyarwanda, igatura aho ushaka utuje utekanye nta kibazo gihari. Muri ADF igihe mazemo nabonye nta vangura ribaho, umuntu akora akazi ashinzwe nta kindi.
Rwanda is still a work in progress. It is up to the next generations to learn the true story of our past, to protect against genocide, denial, and hate, and keep the memory and the lessons of our history alive.
En fait, le négationnisme est en pleine expansion sur Internet, sur les réseaux sociaux, puis sur Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Le discours n'a pas changé. Certaines personnes vont par exemple prétendre que le génocide n'a pas été planifié, mais que les gens se sont mis en colère et ont commencé à tuer. Il faut qu'on soit plus nombreux à protéger la vérité, à protéger l'histoire du génocide contre les Tutsis sur ces plateformes-là.
We have made progress across every sector, creating a secure and ambitious country which offers opportunity and hope to all Rwandans.
byahindutse ni byinshi nyuma ya jenoside yakorewe abatutsi umwana rero akabona buruse atitawe ngo n'ukwande ndi umukobwa ukora mu bijyanye n'ubuvuzi ndetse nkaba ndi no muri siporo kandi byose nkabikora neza rero umwana w'umukobwa icyo yamubwira ni uko turashoboye muri rusange ibyo twajyamo byose dushoboye kubikora neza ndetse turanahagarariwe hirya no hino kugeza ku mudugudu turahagarariwe n'ijwi ryacu rishobora kumvikana.
For our friends around the world, we thank you for continuing to stand with us and ask you to share Rwanda's story and what we've learned about division and reconciliation at a time when the world seems increasingly more fractured. Rwanda's experience is one of unimaginable loss, but it is also the story of a people determined, of resilience, of sacrifice, and of rebirth. Rwanda today is proof that out of the depths of despair can come great hope.
It is now my distinct honor to invite the Minister of Sports, Honorable Minister Neri Mukazaire, to deliver her keynote.
Senior Bureau Officer Nick Checker, members of Diplomatic Corps. Thank you. Dear friends of Rwanda, fellow Rwandans, distinguished guests, good afternoon. It is my honor to be with you today as we commemorate and pay tribute to the lives lost during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. On this day, for the last 32 years and more years to come, we take a moment to pause and be still so that we can reflect, remember, and also recommit. We reflect on the genesis of the journey that led our nation to the genocide against the Tutsi, the most, utmost, ugliest, and devastating genocide of all times, and also think of the terminus that led to the end of that genocide and rehabilitated the country. The genesis was a leadership that promoted hate, divisionism, and discrimination over decades. Tutsis were persecuted. At school, they were asked to identify themselves, stand up among all other children. At workplace, they were given the most demeaning positions despite their competence. In the community, they were isolated, rejected, to the point that in 1959, 60, and 63, they were even sent to one area in the country called Bugesera, which was the most dangerous area because there was a venomous insect, tsetse, and the intention was them to be killed. They were moved from their homes in different areas of the country and isolated. Over time, they were dehumanized, called cockroaches, aliens, snakes, name it. And survivors forced to flee their country in 1959, 63, 90, 91, and 94. The genesis is the leadership that based discrimination and that distributed privileges based on ethnicity, geographic region, rather than meritocracy, and rather than keeping its people educated, most of his population were uneducated and in poverty. To give you a picture, between 1963 and 1994, 31 years, there was only one higher learning institution in Rwanda, University of Rwanda, and only 2,000 university graduates, 31 years in a nation. And even among those, Tutsis were a tiny proportion because of restrictive quotas. That same leadership kept the population as refugees for decades, deprived for their rights to belong, to exist, and prosper. Rwandans, while in exile, were limited to the level of education they could attain, regardless the talent, and limited to what kind of profession they could exercise, even when competent. Left with no choice, these refugees, together with those marginalized within Rwanda, started the liberation struggle led by His Excellency President Paul Kagame. Their vision and motivation was Rwanda, where all Rwandans could be freely, without discrimination, be united and work together for progress and prosperity, led by the government that cared for all its citizens. This is the leadership and young, determined Rwandans that stopped the genocide and embarked on the journey of healing minds and hearts and building the country we see today. On this special day, we do not only reflect, we also remember. The genocide against the Tutsi was not committed by strangers or people who invaded Rwanda. It was us. It was one section of Rwandans, defined as Hutus, sought to exterminate another one defined as Tutsi. This deadly categorization of Rwandans dated back on the time of Belgian colonial rule, as you've seen it in the documentary, but was adopted and executed by the pre-1994 government that planned and carried out the genocide. Within a complex society like ours, with intermarriages across ethnicities, with the same single national language, Kinyarwanda, living in the same village, the genocide against the Tutsi found us in our homes. Parents killing children, and vice versa, siblings killing each other, spouses killing each other. In only 100 days, over 1 million Tutsi lives were lost. That is every day, approximately 240 killings every hour and approximately 10,000 killings every day. Tutsi were killed everywhere, in homes, in churches, on streets, men, women, children, all slaughtered in the most dehumanizing way with the aim of wiping out their existence. Ladies and gentlemen, what happened in Rwanda in 1994 was not a civil war. It was not a double genocide. It was a systematic, planned, intentionally executed genocide against the Tutsi. The genocide planners and perpetrators, they almost succeeded. They left a nation totally devastated. Over 400,000 children, orphans, or separated from their families. Roughly 70% of our population, adult population, was women, with tens of thousands of widows managing households in extreme poverty and trauma. Approximately 3 million of Rwandans fled in the neighboring countries. To give you a bit of context, in 1994, the population of Rwanda was 7 million. So with more than 1 million killed, approximately 3 million refugees going in neighboring countries, and almost 2 million cases of genocide perpetrators, you are left with a country that is totally destroyed, the social fabric non-existing. In addition to that, there was a total destruction of civil infrastructure, hospitals, school roads, and an economy of less than $100 GDP per capita. Rwanda, the country, was a failed state. For the country to rise from those ashes and embark on rebuilding, it took the visionary and exemplary leadership of the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, who summarized the 3 choices that Rwanda made that have served us so well. Be together, be accountable, and think big. To this day, Rwanda's political priorities of unity, accountability, and ambition continue to guide us as we work towards our national goals. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to quickly bring to your attention to 2 major decisions that the president took, which were determining for our future, and that really translate in the above realities, and that will also speak of the existing testimonies that we are. The first one, while addressing RPA as its commander in the midst of the liberal struggle in 1992, he told the troops, "Each of you should keep in mind the aim of our liberation struggle, the goal that made us to take up arms and fight. This means our conduct and actions, our thoughts must always differentiate us from those who we're fighting with. Otherwise, if there is no difference from those we are fighting, our struggle would be meaningless." This is how the policy of no revenge was ordered and enforced. This is why Rwanda later abolished the death penalty in 2007. This is why Rwanda, by 1996, brought back 3 million refugees from refugee camps back to their homes in Rwanda. It is how the ex-army, ex-FAR, the former army which fought the RPA, joined together and formed one integrated Rwanda Defense Force. And this is how today institutions from central to local government are anchored on philosophy of inclusivity, consensus, and citizen-centered service delivery and development. For Rwanda to heal and rebuild, survivors were asked to forgive. That's the second ask. Reconcile and live. Quite a huge ask after all they were suffering, yet they were the ones who had something left to give. Nevertheless, this ask was accompanied by massive effort to deliver justice, because there cannot be reconciliation without justice. Between 2002 and 2012, Rwanda's Gacaca courts tried 2 million cases of suspects accused of committing genocide. Over a period of almost 30 years, 75 ringleaders were tried by United Nations International Criminal Tribunal, the ICTR. The journey of justice continues because there are still genocide fugitives at large in different countries around the world. Rwanda will continue working with the concerned countries to bring them to justice. Ladies and gentlemen, when we take a moment every year to commemorate, Rwanda revisits deep memories. Often it is painful and traumatizing. But we have embraced the challenging reality where each Rwanda has a story, and we are living testimonies of this journey. I was only 12 years old when I learned that my mother was involved in the genocide against the Tutsi. At the same time, we were mourning the killings of my other members of the family on my father's side. The journey was not easy. I struggled with confusion. This can't be true. I struggled with denial. No, she's dead. It's not possible. It's not her. They are confusing her by someone else. I struggled with identity loss and a lot of pain. Pain of embracing that a mother that I love is the same mother that I hate for what she has done, for who she has become. Pain of being a very young girl of 12 years old, but being rejected by your friends because they can't trust you. Which side are you? Survivor or a genocide perpetrator? Children. Who are you? Why have you not told us your story before? Because me, I learned about my mother 2 years after the genocide. She had fled the country, gone with other perpetrators in Congo. She was caught and she was put in jail. But our father was not able to tell us. How do you tell a 12 years old, 9 years old, and 3 years old that their mother was involved in an atrocity like a genocide? How do you tell them that as much as they believe she was dead, and they are mourning their uncles and aunties and grandparents from your side of the family, that actually, although not directly, but she has done the same for someone else's family? I carried the pain and the shame of being called a child of a genocide perpetrator. And the pain of losing motherhood, because mothers are meant to give life, not to take lives. Those are some of the stories of this Rwanda we are telling you today. I'm telling you mine, but we have plenty. We have 14 million stories that have gone through different types of pain and different types of traumas, but have decided to go beyond that and be able to become the Rwanda we are telling you today. When we go back to these stories every year, I remember one time someone asked me, how many times will you talk about that story? And my answer was simple: for as long as I'm going to live, and for as long as my kids will live, and for as long as other generations will live. Because these are our stories, and these are the facts and the realities. When we revisit those moments, they are not enjoyable. We are not having recountless of going back in those memories for the sake of going there and for the sake of telling stories. We are doing that because despite 30 years on, where we still have the pain of losing our dearest and most cherished deep, what keeps us going is the call on duty to live the life they were not able to take forward. The call on duty to live, because after all, life is most abundant pain, and we owe it to them. The call on duty to recommit ourselves to preserving history, tell the truth no matter how ugly and painful it can be, to challenge the false and distorted narrative spread by genocide deniers. Thank you. And ensure that future generations never forget. We are bound by this call to raise the Never Again flag and act. We recommit ourselves on a day like this one to a clean break with our tragic past. As a child of a genocide perpetrator, I am a living testimony of this new Rwanda. I went to school with all other children, attended high learning schools like a survivor child. I competed for different positions by merit. I was able to work for the office of the president as a deputy chief of staff for 10 years. I had high-ranking positions in different organizations in the country that are part of developing the country and defining the agenda of the future of the country. And today, I am the Minister of Sport. I sit in a cabinet chaired by the chief in command who stopped the same genocide my mother was committing. I want all of you to take a moment and let that sink. It's not theory, it's not propaganda, it's reality. Today, I am not judged and seen in the eyes of the name of my mother, but I'm judged and seen in the eyes of what I do for my country, of what I can bring on table in developing this country, and take it to the level that is worth my life and my children's life. We recommit ourselves to also keep that reality to next generations. We have a responsibility to let them know the facts and also make their own decisions. The conversation this commemoration invites us into, beyond genocide, overcoming structural difference and rebuilding a cohesive society, is one of an important conversation. This is at hand a deeply human question. After something this devastating, complex, how do people find their way back to each other? Rwanda has been answering that question for 32 years. From the start, it was clear that the hardest part of rebuilding society was not meeting developmental indicators. Instead, it has been the interior work of rebuilding unity and restoring dignity. This nurturing of the social fabric built into everyday life, in how we listen, how we speak, and the many choices we make, that has created space for dialogue and unusual solutions. And it has enabled progress from the grassroots level. Everyone has a role to play. I play mine every day by choosing who I want to be, by choosing what I have to do for my country. After all, in my country, children are not held responsible for the crimes of their parents. Nevertheless, as much as they're not, I also distance myself from the genocide ideology because that's also my choice to make. And by telling the truth and embracing reality. I love my mother. I visit her. I take care of her. I take my children and friends and family to see her. But it doesn't mean that I endorse any decision or anything she has done. It doesn't mean that justice should not be served. She is my lovely mother, but she has also to be accountable. One of the critical discussions and responsibility I still carry, which is to provide clarity to next generation, is conversations I have today with my 18 years and 15 years old children. My daughter is 18, my son is 15. Coming from a family where their father is a genocide survivor, who has lost his parents, siblings, family, and left with only one aunt and one young brother. I faced tough conversation when one day my children asked me, "Mom, how do you want us to reconcile loving and visiting grandmother who is in the prison with the fact that, although not directly, she is responsible of us not having the other grandmother, uncles, aunties, and is responsible of our father having been left as an orphan and suffered?" Those are tough conversations to have with your children. How do you speak to them so that you don't infest hate in them? How do you speak to them so that they can understand that justice has to be served? How do you speak to them so that they understand the evil that happened and they should not take part of it? And that they have to carry the memory of the other family they have not got a chance to meet, but remain as Rwandans. Do not identify themselves as Hutus or Tutsis, but Rwandans. Those are tough discussions we are having in our homes. I'm speaking of mine. I know there are many that are facing tough discussions. We have to stay in line of what really defines us as Rwandans, to make sure that we're building next generations that will really carry the unity, accountability, and thinking big that we have chosen. As we recommit ourselves, we continue this conversation at national level under the Umunyarwanda, I Am Rwandan, a national initiative launched in 2013 to foster unity and reconciliation by encouraging Rwandans to prioritize shared national identity over ethnic, regional, or tribal divisions. 32 years down the road, Rwanda remains on the right path to development. We have good news to share. We have a long way to still go. But as of today, we are the 6th fastest growing economy in Africa, 2nd in doing business, and 2nd also in business events destination, with strong African hub potential and highly connected airline. We have worked hard in Rwanda to build the physical and human capacity that has enabled us to host events and meetings of big magnitudes like World Economic Forum, Commonwealth meetings of head of governments, Move Africa, and also we recently hosted the World Road Championship of Cyclism. Rwanda is continuously ranked as one of the most improved nations in human development in the world, and the 2nd fastest country in the world that is safe for female solo to travel. So to all women and ladies in the house, welcome to Rwanda. You'll be safe. We rank 4th for government transparency in Africa, with the most women in parliament, 61%, as well as gender-balanced cabinet. Rwanda is fortunate to have a young and growing population, 70% of our population under 30, with a growing bilingual educated workforce between 1995 and 2025. We were able to have approximately 185,000 Rwandans graduated in 30 years, unlike the 2,000 that were there in the pre-genocide leadership. As I conclude, we have a vision about the future we are working to build, which is to be middle-income economy by 2035. We have already seen what is possible when people decide that what they share matters more than what divide them. We remain committed to our cause, since we are fully aware that destiny is not given, it is rather taken. And purpose is not found, it is built brick by brick. The genocide against the Tutsi was carried out by ordinary people who chose hatred, ethnic extremism, and total disregard of humanity. The future we want is being built by ordinary people who choose dignity and equal rights, unity, accountability, and ambition for ourselves, our country, and our continent. We have made the choice, and we must empower and entrust our children with making that choice. We are here because memory, held honestly, is not burden. It is a compass that tells us where we are coming from and that makes sure that we do not lose sight of where we want to go. We remember, unite, and renew. Kwibuka32. Thank you very much for your attention. May God bless you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for the power message and for sharing your story with us. I now invite the representative of the United States government, Honorable Nick Checker, Senior Bureau Official at the Bureau of African Affairs at the Department of State, to deliver remarks. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Professor Mathilde Mukantabana, Ambassador of the Republic of Rwanda, Honorable Minister, Your Excellencies, other colleagues from the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to participate with you in this commemoration of Kwibuka32. And thank you so much to the Honorable Minister for sharing your very powerful words with us this afternoon. As we gather here today to mark the solemn occasion of Kwibuka, let us do so in somber recognition of the unspeakable horrors that befell the Rwandan people during the genocide against the Tutsi. Today we remember the 1 million Tutsi victims, as well as Hutu, Twa, and others who were murdered due to their opposition to a genocidal regime. In the difficult heaviness of the moment, I join with all of you in reflecting on the innocent lives that were lost, the families that were torn asunder, and the communities that were destroyed. I have personally visited Rwanda and seen the sites where the genocide was committed firsthand. Nyamata, one of the former Catholic churches, in particular, where tens of thousands of Tutsis sought refuge and were brutally murdered by the extremists. Standing before those altars, one cannot escape the visceral reality of what occurred there and be profoundly moved. The stains in those sanctuaries remain not abstract symbols. They are the physical trace of lives stolen, of violence brought into a place consecrated for communion. The altar where the holy sacrifice of Mass is offered, where the blood of Christ is made present for the salvation of the world, was here mingled with the blood of innocents during the genocide against the Tutsi. For Catholics, such as myself, the altar is not just a table, it is Calvary. As the Church teaches, every Mass makes present the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. To see an altar stained with human blood is therefore to encounter in a deeply and unsettling way the intersection of Christ's sacrifice and humanity's capacity for sin. And yet even here, the mystery of the cross is revealed to us. As St. Augustine wrote, God judged it better to bring good out of evil than to permit no evil to exist. This does not explain away the horror, but it affirms that this is not beyond redemption. The altars remain even now a sign of hope, because the final word of the cross is not death, but resurrection. As St. Paul writes, where sin increased, grace abounded all the more. The promise does not diminish what happened there, it stands in defiance of it. And yet we also see a sign of something more, that grace has not remained abstract, but has taken root in the life of the Rwandan nation. In the 32 years since the genocide against the Tutsi, Rwanda has undertaken a path that is by any historical measure extraordinary, restoring security, rebuilding institutions, and creating a national identity that rejects divisions which made such violence possible. This did not happen by accident. It required leadership willing to make difficult, sometimes stark choices in the immediate aftermath of catastrophe. Choices aimed at ensuring that the conditions for mass violence could not reemerge. In that sense, the preservation of order and reestablishing of state authority stand as real and consequential achievements. The United States supports the Rwandan resolve for unity and reconciliation. We oppose any attempt to misrepresent the historical record for political purposes and reject any denial or minimization of the genocide. We condemn those who employ hateful rhetoric to foment violence and hate rather than use the power of their words to promote peace. Today, all of us can honor the genocide's victims by renewing our commitment to build a world where such atrocities can never happen again. A key component of this effort is bringing justice to the victims and survivors by holding perpetrators accountable. The United States is one of the Rwandan people's strongest advocates in seeking accountability for the genocide. The United States helped to establish and support the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Through U.S. diplomatic engagement and information sharing, we aided in the capture, prosecution, and repatriation of many of the criminals responsible for the genocide. The United States will continue to work with our partners to bring those responsible for the genocide to justice. Your presence today is a commitment to learn from history and ensure we will not repeat the mistakes of our past. In closing, I offer my respect and reverence for the victims and survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi. May their memory be a guiding light in our pursuit for a more just world. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Checker, for your message. We will now proceed to our panel discussion. I now invite the moderator and panelists to take the stage for a panel discussion titled Beyond Genocide, Overcoming Structural Differences and Rebuilding a Cohesive Society, moderated by Sandrine Iralkunda.
We are honored to be joined by these distinguished panelists whose work and lived experiences engage directly with these themes. Dr. Sarah Brown, here to my right, is a world-renowned expert on genocide studies whose research focuses on gender and mass violence. Her book, Gender and Genocide in Rwanda, Women as Rescuer and Perpetrator, challenges conventional narratives by examining the complex roles women played during the genocide. Her research highlights both participation in the genocide and acts of moral courage, offering a nuanced understanding of how gender intersects with extremist ideology. Dr. Kwibuka32 is an assistant professor at UMass Amherst, vice president of Kwibuka, USA, and a survivor of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Dr. Kwibuka brings a critical perspective on post-genocide reality. Her work with Kwibuka focuses on memory, identity, justice, and the challenge faced by survivors. Dr. Margie Ensign has served as a university president on 3 continents and is a widely recognized scholar with extensive research on Rwanda. Dr. Ensign focuses on post-genocide recovery, governance, and development. Her work analyzes how Rwanda has rebuilt state institutions, fostered stability, and pursued socio-economic transformation. Her book, Rwanda, History and Hope, was the first to document the early stages of rebuilding in Rwanda. So we're really truly honored to have you with us this afternoon. Thank you for your time, and thank you to you all as well for being here for this important occasion. So I will now begin our discussion with Dr. Iradukunda, but we have also received questions from students that will also bring into the conversation as we proceed. Dr. Iradukunda, I want to start with you. As a survivor of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi and also the vice president of Kwibuka, which is an organization that was born out of the need to give survivors a voice here in the United States and also beyond. How do you believe the survivor narratives can be more effectively integrated in education systems and policy frameworks in ways that preserve historical truth and help prevent future atrocities?
Thank you, Sandrine. That's a big question. I have a lot of notes here, so please stop me. I know we have limited time. But I think the first step to integrating survivors' narrative into education systems and policy frameworks is for the survivors to tell their stories in the first place. So we have to have the stories told. We have to allow survivors to share their lived experiences and for our stories not only to be told, but to be honored and made accessible through writing and other forms of storytelling. We know that a considerable number of survivors here in the US and beyond have been sharing their stories through books, academic journals, podcasts, and other forms of storytelling. And I would like to commend their incredible courage in doing so. It's not easy. Another encouraging fact is that we are increasingly seeing a number of young survivors telling their stories or their family stories or trying to gather their family stories, which is good. So these narratives should be the primary source of education for organizations and individuals. We know that it's not common for academic spaces to focus on the numbers. We love numbers in academia. Or books written by academic researchers. We love our researchers. But sometimes these researchers don't have the lived experience. Oftentimes they don't. While these remain important tools that we can use, they don't tell the full story. Survivors' narratives humanize the numbers. And it is extremely important to let survivors tell their own stories. There is more work to be done in terms of making sure that these narratives are widely available once they are published. It is encouraging that some libraries and bookstores in the US, in some parts of the US, they are increasing carrying survivors' books. They are reaching out to us, asking for books. And so we are encouraged, and we do encourage more libraries to partner with Kwibuka, to partner with the writers themselves to make stories available. This partnership is important because it also helps in creating educational opportunities. Once a book is published, we get the writers to go to the library to tell their story. And so that part of humanizing the story is there. But we also know that despite the increase in the number of stories written, told by survivors, there are still many barriers, especially related to publishing. Many survivors find the writing publication process daunting. I am in academia, I find it daunting. And so this is why we are here at a university and seeking experienced writers willing to work with us to demystify the writing process. It's not as, it has to be demystified. And so we are seeking those writers, but also to get some writing workshops for the survivor community, continuous mentorship, and ensuring that stories are told and shared widely. But even as we encourage survivors to write, let's remember that Rwanda is an oral tradition community. We love to tell stories. We tell them well. And so not everybody is going to write a book. Not everybody has to write a book. And so we have to keep thinking about sustainable way to memorialize survivors' oral stories without necessarily having it be in a book. We have members of our community. I have surviving members of my community who I know for sure they are not going to write a book, yet they carry most of the details of how we survived. And so it is important to make sure that these stories are collected, and it's actually really urgent because, as I said in my speech, a lot of our elder members are unfortunately aging and passing on early. The second part of the question,
which again was a very complex question, is how do we integrate the narrative into education policy? I just talked about how we make sure that the stories are actually shared, they are made available. So first of all, I want to highlight the importance of policy in this area. As survivors, we are the keeper of our narratives, but it's important to have strong policies to protect our memory. We can tell our narratives, we can tell the stories, but without the policies to protect our memories, the stories won't be protected. In education, happy to report there has been an interest from some schools, university, and a number of states and counties across the US to collaborate with us in integrating survivors' narrative in their program. We even had someone reach out to ask us to develop an anti-genocide program for their school based on survivors' narrative. But the number of people reaching out to us is still very, very limited. And the level to which our lived experience are respected, especially in academic space, to be honest, it needs improvement. There is also more work to be done when it comes to policy to protect our memory, as I said, and allow our community to thrive. That being said, I would like to acknowledge the many counties, cities that have signed proclamation. We have a lot of states that are doing it, acknowledging and naming the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Many of these states, cities have made April 7th a day of reflection. So thank you to the states that have done it. We truly don't need everyone's support in ensuring that your town, your city, your state follow suit. You are going to be our advocate in your town, your city, wherever you live here in this United States. And while we are here, and especially today, let me again emphasize that it is the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. There is no alternative. There is no synonym. There is no need to invent one. Let me just wanted to put that out there. Another way to advance policy protecting memory is to ensure that survivors are actually involved in shaping the policy. Oftentimes we get invited, we share our lived experience, but we are seldomly invited to shape policies. Yet our narrative are not just stories, it's lived experience that has taught us valuable lessons that can help shape policies to prevent atrocities. For example, we know what hate speech is, we really do, and we know its consequences. We can therefore help in informing the shaping policies, addressing hate policy, for example. So these are just a few of the ideas.
Thank you so much. That was very thorough. And just continuing with the thread of hate speech that you brought up, I want to turn to you, Dr. Brown. In your work on the genocide against the Tutsi, you examine how ordinary people, with a particular attention to women, became involved in the genocidal project, and you pay close attention to the gendered content of the anti-Tutsi propaganda. Drawing from that analysis, in today's global context, what would you say are the most reliable early warning indicator that hate speech is evolving into organized genocidal ideology? And how can policymakers distinguish between protected speech and dangerous incitement before violence? Because we always hear about protected speech and that being used as an excuse. So if you can speak to that.
Also a challenging set of questions I want to acknowledge. First, I just want to say it is my sad honor to be here with you. And as I was thinking about today and the significance of being at Kwibuka32, I was thinking of Kwibuka10, Kwibuka20. But as I was thinking about it, I thought about the words of Holocaust survivor and author Elie Wiesel. And he said at one point, we must bear witness. For not only are we responsible for the memories of the dead, we are responsible for what we are doing with those memories. And so I extend my gratitude to all of you for being here today and also for the invitation to participate. This is an important question. Identifying the gray areas of the line that divides hate speech and incitement to commit violence is essential in the American context and beyond. And it's a running challenge. Here in the United States, hate speech is protected speech. And the line between hate speech and incitement to violence is such that an extremist, be them a racist, an anti-Semite, or a holdover from the anti-Tutsi ideology that reigned in 1994 Rwanda, those extremists can spew horrific language, espouse conspiracy theories, and share dehumanizing hate rhetoric in public spaces, online, and even in government proceedings like a 6-hour-long city council meeting I recently attended, during which extremists cited anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and myths, and this is all considered protected speech. Here in the United States, it is the right of the hater to spew their hatred. The line that separates hate speech and incitement is messy. It's difficult to determine, often in the moment, and in all honesty, it is insufficient. Because hate speech rarely ends there, we know all too often hate speech leads to acts of hate, often violent, and we have not yet solved for that problem across the United States. Now, I am speaking from Georgetown University here in the United States and with a uniquely American lens. And I want to acknowledge this specific lens because the reality in the United States is not the same as in Rwanda or across European Union nations where there are safeguards against hate speech and they can take proactive measures ahead of what we can do here in the US. But here in the US, that doesn't mean that we stand by and we do nothing. One of the major risk factors reflected in the case of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, alongside political upheaval, threats to the regime, prior atrocities perpetrated against Tutsis without any accountability, and unrestrained executive authority, was the normalization of an exclusionary ideology and discrimination. Now, what do I mean by normalization? When we hear hate speech targeting a group, it is and should be jarring. It should cause us pause, and it is a moment for everyday citizens to stand up against it and say no. But when exclusionary ideologies and discriminatory practices targeting a group are normalized, they become everyday practice, and they do not cause pause, rejection, or action. This normalization is a key early indicator that a country or a region is at risk of descending into violence. And it is implemented through a variety of mechanisms, including dehumanizing language and hate speech. As a result, we must be on the watch. We have to watch for rhetoric and actions taken to exclude certain segments of a population, normalize discrimination and hatred of a group, and dehumanizing language, likening a group to animals, pestilence, demons, or other inhuman or subhuman categories that by virtue of no longer being considered human would not be afforded the rights assured to all human beings, including the right to life. So look for decrees, programming, imagery, print materials, social media content, edited footage. The importance of words and images as tools for mobilization cannot be overstated. This is not new. Here too, we must be mindful of the role of fear as a mobilizing agent. I found in my research that the most important mobilizing tool in Rwanda was fear. An alliance was formed between media, government, and local leaders and other key stakeholders that ensured that the population was subjected to image, print, and radio influences that invoked terror and anxiety. The propagation and manipulation of this fear took place in all levels of society and in every sphere of influence, from the military to the lay leadership, from the public to the private. And fear resulting from threat is a powerful mobilizing tool. And combined with the normalization of exclusionary ideologies and discrimination, it can lead to violence, even genocide.
Thank you so much. I wanted to turn to you, Dr. Ensign, and talk about reconstruction. So you have documented Rwanda's remarkable post-genocide reconstruction. Could you briefly reflect on the progress Rwanda has made in the last 3 decades, particularly in the areas of governance and social rebuilding? And that this is also a two-part. In the near view, what were the most critical policy and leadership decisions that made that progress possible?
Thank you for the questions. Thank you for those important questions. Thank you to my fellow panelists for your comments, and Minister, Your profound comments will stay for with all of us forever. So thank you for sharing that. And what you've said to me is today is the day to speak the truth, isn't it? And we all have to leave here today a little more of an understanding of what happened, and also an understanding of how far Rwanda has come. I've had the privilege of documenting how Rwanda rebuilt since 1999, when I went to find a student who I had put on a plane from here in 1994, who was running a State Department program. He said, I have to go home. I said, you can't go home. The US government is paying for you to be here. He said, my family is going to be killed. I must go home. So I put him on that plane, and I had to go back and find him. So in the late 90s, I had the great privilege of beginning to come to Rwanda, and I did find him. He had lived Bonaventure and became very prominent, one of those early leaders in Nigeria. So there has been so much ignorance and skepticism and disinformation, not only about the genocide against the Tutsi, but where Rwanda is now. So I just ask you all to think, let's leave talking about the truth, right? So imagine your country looks like this. A country of 7 million, 1 million were killed, infrastructure was decimated, all the key sectors were destroyed. Agriculture, no food, no economy, no healthcare, no education, no justice system. Before the genocide, there were 758 judges alive and practicing after 224. Who was going to deal with those perpetrators? Social cohesion was destroyed. The perpetrators lived in the country. They were neighbors. They were on the hills with other people. Trust and hope was destroyed. So the progress is disputed, so let's look at data that no one can dispute. Life expectancy in 1994 was what? It's the age for many of the students in this room, 28. In 2024, what is life expectancy in Rwanda according to the World Bank? It is 68. No country has made progress that quickly. And I use life expectancy because people only live longer if they have access to health care, if they have food, if they have education. Incredible progress. GDP per capita was about 100. It is now 1,000, with a population that's doubled from 7 million to 15 million. So reflect on that. I talk a lot about maternal mortality because maternal mortality measures the number of women who die in childbirth or right after. Rwanda had one of the highest after the genocide at 1,116 per 100,000. Right now it has the lowest in the region, 229. Nigeria, a big, wealthy country that I lived and worked in for 8 years, much more capable of handling things like this, is 993. Please reflect on this data. Gender parity in schools, universal health care, and gender parity through secondary school. Why is that important? All the data shows us when women are educated through secondary school, infant and child mortality decline, HIV prevalence declines, there's improvements in economic growth, and lo and behold, there's a reduction in corruption. So Rwanda has focused on these things, on gender and equity. And as we've heard, Rwanda is the first country with a female majority in parliament. And when you ask the question, how did all this happen? Women had a great deal to do with it. The 2003 Constitution had a 30% gender quota for women in all elected government positions. It is now, as the end of last year, 63.8%. Worldwide, what's the percent? 27.5. The only other countries that come close are Costa Rica, Mexico, UAE, and several others. So how did this happen? This tremendous progress in 32 years. There are many reasons. I'm just going to cite a few. The focus on gender equity being one of them. You heard a little bit about Gacaca. I happened to be in the country just as Gacaca was being discussed. And the Minister of Justice was being challenged by a very important international human rights lawyer, you must give a trial for each of the perpetrators. You can't have justice without it. And his comment was, send us the prosecutors, send us the judges. There's no one left. So Rwanda turned back to something called homegrown solutions. And I think this is really important because these concepts, these practices emerged from the society. Gacaca being one of them that you talked about so eloquently. It had been a practice to deal with much less serious conflicts, trials in the hills. As you said, 260,000 citizens were elected to be judges, and they were trained. It was called the largest experiment in public justice in modern history. It would have taken 200 years to have those trials if they'd gone through a traditional justice system. 1,958,000 cases were heard. It was the most comprehensive post-conflict justice program attempted in history. I went with my student to his Gacaca trial of his family who was wiped out. I will never forget sitting on a bench with a mayor who had killed many children. It was very hard for me to believe this was reconciliation, this was justice, until I asked him on the way home, how do you feel? How are you? And he said, I feel free. Justice was served. So it's the survivors that matter here and how this unfolded. The second thing, there are many homegrown solutions, and they're just so innovative, and I hope you'll do a little research on them. The second one was the fact that in the early 2000s, Rwanda passed a decentralization policy. Big risk. Let's decentralize everything, right? When you've just gone through a genocide. But the then Minister of Local Administration, who I had the privilege to go around with, Minister Musoni, Proteus Musoni, said, we must understand how local people feel about things. And I believe this was an enormous part of the progress. So very quickly, another homegrown solution was Ubudehi, which was a community process where people came together in agriculture to plant crops together. It turned into a very different type of initiative where people came together to say, this is what we need, and this is the money that we need for it. The overarching concept was something called Imihigo. And I believe Imihigo is a big part of the progress in Rwanda. Again, very locally based. It used to be a ritual where people came together to compete. And it became that at the national level, but in terms of performance, so that people's lives would improve. So from the very beginning, in a country that has experienced genocide, local people were saying, this is what we need, and we're going to hold you accountable, leaders who are elected, for achieving these. And so at all levels in society now, Imihigos, which are performance contracts, governance performance contracts, are signed. And I was at the very first one where it was televised on television. And the mayors came in and said, here's my Imihigo, here's what I was committed to accomplish in education and health and gender. And there was a stoplight, red, green, and yellow. If you were doing really well, you got a green. If you were only making a little progress, a yellow. If you weren't making progress, you got a red, and you better make sure you had your job in the future. So it's the accountability issue that's so important here. And not too long ago, Rwanda introduced Accountability Day. I attended one. It's extraordinary to hear local people challenging their leaders. Why didn't you accomplish the goals that we agreed to? We definitely need an Accountability Day in the United States. So Imihigo, I believe, was an extraordinary part of this progress. So 32 years after the genocide against the Tutsi, Rwanda is making remarkable progress in education, in gender, and economic growth, in poverty reduction, justice, governance, local participation, and healthcare. Many challenges remain, of course, in agriculture, in productivity, in income distribution. But based on the privileged time I have had in Rwanda, I can say that it's a country with extraordinary vision, with honest, capable, and transformational leaders, including these two women in front of me, Minister Ambassador Mukwegebana, focused on the future, developing new models of development, dealing with its history, and empowering hope. We can all learn a lot from the story of Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ensign. And speaking about lessons, I wanted to turn to you, Dr. Brown. After the Holocaust, the promise was never again. After Rwanda, the world repeated that promise, yet many would say that never again has too often become time and again. Do you think the world has learned any lessons?
I'll be honest, this is a question that keeps me up at night. I am the very proud Jewish mother of a 4th generation Holocaust survivor. And so this is something that I am deeply concerned about. I'm forced to ask that question far too often. I'm also a recovering educator, similar to Ambassador Mukwegebana, and so you are going to get from me an educator's answer. I really feel that many of the biggest lessons that we can learn are found in effective education. Here I have to give great credit to Rwanda. The education initiative that has taken place has swept that country, has cast a difficult, hard, and necessary lens on a very dark chapter in history, but it's also created an opportunity for the young people to learn, grow, and know their history. And I have to give credit there. Now, education is also the best form of advocacy that we have. And education is not just effective as a response to the hate ideology that undergirds a genocide, it also is part of the answer to proactive prevention. It's not a panacea, it's not a silver bullet, it doesn't fix everything, but it is an essential component, and I feel it's often overlooked. So alongside strong governance, accountability, and restorative practices if atrocities have occurred, and other necessary mechanisms, education is important. Education can inoculate our young people from extremist ideologies, from misinformation and disinformation campaigns attempting to distort history and sow divisions, from the virulent hate that we see being espoused on social media and by genocidal governments and bodies around the globe. Now, I'm proud of the work that I do with my colleague, Dr. Holly Naiseth and Zita Tira. Together, we co-founded Twige. If you know, you know. It means we learn together, let's learn. And began developing educational content for K through 12 audiences. This is deliberate. We recognize that much of the genocide scholarship that's available, and this is to your point, which I very much appreciated, it's for a university-facing audience, or it's very much in academic speak. But the young leaders who are sitting in our middle schools and high schools right now, they need to be learning this content. So I'm proud to share that our curricular content, lesson plans, more than a dozen lesson plans, about the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, grounded in the human story of genocide, are the most downloaded resources on the California Collaborative for Holocaust and Genocide Education's website. We've also published a guide for educators on how to teach about genocide and lesson plans on the Guatemalan genocide. And we train teachers around the United States on how to teach this content in a middle and high school context. These resources are funded by grants and therefore free for anyone to access, and this matters too. We cannot hide the content behind paywalls. It must be accessible, affordable, and high quality. I'll also say this, sharing a best practice based on the work of the organization I'm very proud to work for, American Jewish Committee. We cannot wait. We must be proactive in our efforts to combat hate and fight it wherever we find it. We need to meet the moment wherever it arises, and right now that means addressing social media and AI platforms. This is where misinformation and disinformation campaigns and emerging vernacular, often disguised as euphemisms, is being used to propagate hate and distort or diminish history on a global level. And this is what I also appreciated what Dr. Iradukunda spoke of in her opening remarks. She's absolutely correct. I'm not a social media expert, but even I do my small part. Bear with me. Helping to curate content for young learners who are gleaning their news from social media sources and far too often are exposed to violent ideologies disguised as news and information. So if we want to realize the oft-cited adage of never again, We must play a role in educating across society, but especially our young people. And we must meet learners in the spaces where they are congregating and curate content that they can access. And we cannot wait for another day or sometime in the future when our schedules free up, when we have more time, when we have the resources. It's time to take the lessons we've learned and implement them now.
Thank you. And we received a question from a student that I want to pose to the panelists, and if you can respond. And it says, what role can policymakers or young people, especially students, play today in preventing atrocities?
I have to brag because I actually have one of my students in the audience. I'm a high school student here. I'm not going to point you out because I don't want to embarrass you. I'm a high school student here from San Diego, California, who happened to be here doing a university tour at the same time that I was on this panel, and so I invited him to come. He is part of a program that we call Leaders for Tomorrow, and every month we do training on identity, advocacy, and at the end of this, each student is to do an advocacy project. His advocacy project is bringing, it's me, so sorry about that, but bringing someone to come and speak to his upper school about instances of genocide in modern history. It's the first time that I know of that his school is going to take this kind of measure. They're doing it at the end of April. He's the example. Wow. He's the opportunity. When we train our young people to lead and we give them the runway and the resources so that they can realize their projects, they will do better than all of us combined. And so I think that's a very key component of it. And also creating policy initiatives where we are facilitating and distributing those resources to meet the young learners where they are. They're already leading in their own right. Sometimes we just have to get out of the way or give them a little boost.
That's a really good answer. The only thing I'll add is that every year, as an educator, I get a chance to see bright young mind. They're very brilliant. They are tech savvy. I'm with you. I'm not, social media experts. Most of them are really tech savvy, and they're not afraid to challenge the status quo. And so they have a lot of willpower that. If we make sure that, and they make sure, like you said, they're informed, they can use that tech savviness, if that's a word, they can use that willpower to inform their peers, because learning starts there. When you learn something new, when you learn the truth, you share it with peers. Young people are doing that already, and making sure that, as we've seen in the US, we've seen younger generation challenge older generation in so many different ways. And so when that can be used, I think that will be really a powerful tool. So we do have a next generation leader in Kwibuka, and I know that she's been working with young people to make sure that they are informed and they are ready to share what they know and inform others.
That's great.
So I believe we're living in a perilous moment where violence and hatred and division and discrimination is increasing rapidly, daily. So I think we look into our own hearts to begin with and make sure we're not perpetuating that, but to also make sure we're not accepting it. And so I think as individuals, we have an enormous responsibility to play as educators. And I chair a committee looking at the use of AI in democracy. And all of us must get up to speed on how AI can be used for good, which of course it can, but the disinformation that can emerge so quickly from that. So I think we have individual responsibilities as well, of course, structural ones in our systems.
Thank you. Thank you all for your insight, for sharing your research with us and sharing your stories. And thank you all for your attention.
For that very insightful discussion, but also a special thanks to the students of Georgetown for also being active participants in this important dialogue. We will now hear closing remarks from Her Excellency Ambassador Mathilde Mukantabana, Ambassador of the Republic of Rwanda to the United States.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's always very difficult to speak at the last minute because my speech was taken piece by piece. So for me, it's pretty easy because we just heard from a very powerful panel, and our minister, I can't add to what she has said in a number of ways. It's very difficult to come when it's about remembrance, because I know many people in the room have lost their loved ones. So as we begin the 32nd commemoration that we know as Kwibuka32, I really extend you strength. We just have to be here for each other, and this is, I'm sending my strength, comfort, and also to know that we are all standing together with you with this suffering. Excellencies, distinguished guests, members of the diplomatic corps, thank you for joining us today as we remember more than 1 million people who died during the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. I take this opportunity first to thank Senior Bureau Officer Nick Checker, who has left, but his team is still here, for his message of support and solidarity, and for the enduring partnership and friendship between Rwanda and the United States. Thank you so much, Minister Nelly, for your powerful testimony reflecting both the pain of our history and the resilience that defines our people and our nation. I would also like to thank our distinguished panelists, because you added a lot. It was a very powerful panel that added to the strands of our theme. Dr. Favorit Iradukunda, for centering survivors' experiences while confronting the persistent challenges of denial and revisionism. Dr. Sarah Brown, for advancing the conversation from historical analysis to practical insight in how genocide ideology manifests today, particularly through the hate speech, and how it can be identified and prevented early. And Dr. Maggie Ensign, you are over there, for your thoughtful examination of Rwanda's post-genocide governance model and the structural foundations that have supported national recovery and long-term stability. To the survivors among us today who are in the room, and also to those who are in our states and in the world, we stand with you in solemn remembrance. We honor your courage, your resistance, your resilience, and you continue to inspire us, all of us. And as we reaffirm that your memory and dignity will never be forgotten. Kwibuka32, under the theme Remember, Unite, Renew, is both a reflection but also a call to action. We remember because truth matters. The genocide against the Tutsi was not spontaneous. It was not an eruption of savage violence. It was prepared, and for a long time. And Minister Nelly spoke very diligently about that. But just in 100 days, entire families and entire communities were completely wiped out. Remember them all. Our parents, our siblings, our brothers and sisters, our neighbors. And this is not about statistics. We remember the people who sang, the people who danced, the people who loved, the people who were people, just like us here in this room. Our collective memory has allowed us to look within and reimagine what it means to live together. It has transformed remembrance into an enduring commitment to peace, unity, and development. We have transformed our wounded memory into fertile ground from which we draw strength
and lessons. We remember, because today, the threat is no longer just silence. It's a harmful perversion of the truth. It's a denial. It's revisionism. The genocide was deliberately planned and executed across the world. There are organized efforts to rewrite the history of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, to deny its planning, and to promote false equivalencies. Today, denial and revisionism have evolved, spreading rapidly across these digital platforms, and our previous presenters have gone over it extensively, so I'm not going back to that. Preserving the truth is essential, not only to honor the victims, the ones we lost, but to protect the integrity of the memory itself. I call on you today to help to confront genocide ideology and the attending denialism with clarity, facts, and resolve. We remember that the truth is not distorted. Ladies and gentlemen, we unite because unity is the foundation of our resilience. After the genocide against the Tutsi, Rwanda faced formidable challenges, and you've heard through the testimony of our minister, some of it that is very intimate. We could have chosen to remain trapped in division or rebuild as one people. And Rwanda chose unity. We chose to rebuild our nation around shared identity, Ndi Umunyarwanda or I'm Rwandan. Through deliberate policies and national commitment, we rejected ethnic divisions and we embarked on the challenging journey of reconciliation and national cohesion. Today, that choice is reflected in measurable progress. The 2025 National Unity Barometer measurement, in Rwanda we have what they call a scorecard. A scorecard is to see how far we have been, and Dr. Margie Ensign alluded to it when she was talking about our performance contract in Higo. And this is in all the state, in all the local government places, villages, and our scorecard on national reconciliation was 95.3%. Most Rwandans see themselves as a reconciled country, and it's visible. These are not just statistics. I'm not giving statistics to impress anybody, but they are evidence that even after unimaginable tragedy, a nation can rebuild trust, dignity, and cohesion. Yet unity requires constant vigilance, as the effects of genocide ideology and the wounds carried by survivors remind us that this work is still ongoing. We renew because remembrance must lead to action. Kwibuka is not only to look back. It's not about just remembrance and looking back. It's about shaping our future. Today, the ideology that fueled the genocide has not disappeared. It has adapted. Perpetrators not only systematically sought to exterminate the Tutsi population, but they also continue to be the torchbearers of genocidal ideology and in denial, especially in our region. For example, FDLR, an organization rooted in the very forces that carried out the killing of 1 million people 32 years ago, is remaining active in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where it continues to victimize the communities and to threaten Rwanda's peace and security. Deniers present and were in many institutions and countries that knowingly try to scramble history by establishing a false moral equivalency between a war and a genocide. We therefore call on all of you here, the international community, to uphold the truth, not selectively, but consistently. We call on all nations to fulfill their obligation under the international law, including bringing genocide fugitives to justice wherever they may be. And we call for vigilance, because prevention is not a slogan. It's a duty and a shared responsibility. The never again must be upheld through sustained collective effort. To the members of the Rwandan community here in the United States, each of us has a role to play to engage, to remember, and to uphold the values that define this period. Your presence and participation is vital. Kwibuka is not only Rwanda's story. I call on all of you who are present here as we continue our fight against genocide and genocide ideology, because genocide prevention requires unwavering commitment from all of us. As we begin today the period of remembrance, let's do so with humility, unity, and resolve. Let's stand with the survivors in compassion and in action. And let us ensure that never again is not only an empty promise, but a commitment to act. As I conclude, I would like to again express my gratitude to our host country, United States, and to all the countries represented here for standing with us today as we remember and honor our loved ones. I also thank Georgetown University for hosting us and for providing a space to reflect, remember, and engage in this very important conversation. We greatly appreciate your friendship and solidarity. Turi kumwe, we are all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency Ambassador, for your message. We thank you once again for joining us in remembrance and reflection. Additional community-led Kwibuka32 events will be taking place across the United States. The full schedule is available at ibukausa.org